Hello, and welcome to Roundtable Mindset, the podcast where we seek to understand and share different perspectives in order to grow and challenge our own. And we encourage you, our guests, to do the same.
Each week, we will pick a topic to discuss, sharing our own unique thoughts and insights. There will be times when we won't agree, and let's be real, that'll probably be most of the time, and that's okay. We feel it's important to understand that we can live in this polarized world and still respect one another and even be friends.
This podcast episode discusses the topic of gun control, which may be triggering for individuals who have experienced gun violence or trauma related to firearms. Listener discretion is advised. Well, hello. Welcome back, everyone, to the Roundtable Mindset. I'm Jamie.
And this is Mahlon.
And we're back for another episode. And this week, we're pretty excited. We've got some new things to bring to you.
But updates.
First,
fun updates.
Yeah. Updates, yes. We have had a huge amount of response to our first podcasts that have been dropped. And so we just want to say thanks. You guys have joined us for the ride, and we are having a blast. And so we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes. We've had quite a bit of feedback. We've got a Facebook page. We'll give you more information about that at the end. We've also gotten some listener suggestions, and that's going to be our topic today. But before we get into all that, Mahlon, you have some food for thought, maybe even literally.
Exactly. So yeah, today's food for thought, which is very fitting for this topic or this segment. Throughout the week, it's been kind of quiet for me. Nothing's really, earth-shattering has happened. Work was normal. Personal life was normal. Things were just kind of going just fine. And it wasn't until I was having lunch right before we started recording this episode that something so small and insignificant happened that caught my attention. And it took me right back to what we're doing here on this podcast, which was... It's so fantastic how many little things throughout a day or a week or situations that maybe I wasn't paying attention to before, suddenly I can start saying, wow, that's a shift in a perspective. I don't know if I would have gotten that a few years ago. So it's just fun to do. But in this particular case, we were just, my family and I, we just got back from church and we stopped by a local fast food restaurant. I'm sure everybody has one in their town. And my son had a friend that spent the night and went to church with us. And so we got him some lunch and we get back home and we're putting out the food for everyone and just chit-chatting. Again, mundane, routine things. And I remember sitting down, getting my lunch ready, starting to eat it. And I looked over and my son's friend was doing the most bizarre thing, which took me by surprise. And again, very mundane. I think everybody listening probably have had some of these at one point in time, but he was eating chicken nuggets, and with his chicken nuggets, he had dipping sauces. Now, I know we've talked about this, Jamie, getting ready for today's recording, but I've always learned, and I grew up with, how you eat chicken nuggets is you take the chicken nugget, and you dip it in the dipping sauce, and then you eat it. And when I tell you, I looked over at my son's friend, and he was breaking the cardinal rule. He was almost causing a sin, to be honest. He was not taking his chicken nugget and dipping it in the sauce like you're supposed to. He literally took his sauces, multiple, dumped them together on top of his chicken nuggets, inside the box, then proceeded to take his box and shake it, and shake it, and shake it, basically coating them to be like little saucy chicken bits. And they were smothered in the sauce, and it looked so good. And I thought to myself, I'm like, he can't do that. That's chicken nuggets. And it took me back to everything we've been talking about. I'm like, oh my gosh, what a wonderful representation of doing something we've probably all done 100 times. And again, I'm sure there are people that eat their chicken nuggets differently, but I'm just saying for me, I've always done it the one way. And for something that's simple, to look at it in a different way, to think, wow, I can take these building blocks that I've known for 30 years and do something completely different with them and have a different outcome, and even sometimes change the entire existence of what this item was from the beginning to the end. Just blew my mind. And I know it's chicken nuggets and dipping sauce, but I was floored. I was flabbergasted.
It's not chicken nuggets and dipping sauce. It's saucy chicken bits. And I hope that at some point we can coin the term saucy chicken bits.
You heard it here first. It's ours. It's ours.
Some restaurant needs to make saucy chicken bits. I love that. I love that once you start paying attention and start looking for those little things and are open to receiving those little insights, I love that you get to see them more. And sometimes it doesn't have to be some deep-rooted thing, which is why I told you I got nothing for food for thought today. You found something in the saucy chicken bits. So I love that.
Well,
I love that.
Yeah, and so I was making a big deal at the lunch table, and my son's friend was looking at me like I do this all the time. And I said, "You don't understand." I'm like, "I've literally just you've shattered my perspective of chicken nuggets. I've always thought you could only eat them one way because that's the only way I've ever eaten them." And I said, "You have changed. You forever have changed the way I look at those. I'm not going to think I only have one option now." And they were looking at me kind of like what you're looking at me now, right? Right now, Jamie, like, "You're kind of crazy, dude." But I was like, it's so important to realize, okay, we're talking about chicken nuggets and saucy chicken bits, but apply that in your life. Like, how many times, if I take a step back and I think to myself, how many times do I do the same thing throughout the day because that's how I've always done it, or that's what was shown to me, and I just accept it. And even things that I don't even stop and think about because they're not worth stopping and thinking about, like how I eat my chicken nuggets. If we did just stop and we did look at the things that we do every day and challenge yourself to say, how can I see this with fresh eyes, with a different perspective, how we could change even our everyday lives, our everyday world would start shifting.
Yeah.
I'm having utopia over here. They're having lunch. So it was quite the conversation.
That's awesome. And I know the next time you and I hang out and we have chicken nuggets, I'm going to see you shake them violently. I know this is coming.
It really is. Like, I cannot wait. I think I was going to order something else for dinner. I think it's every Sunday night is pizza night around here. I think I'm going to get myself some chicken nuggets so I can shake them violently and have something different.
And have saucy chicken bits. Well, thanks for paying attention to the chicken today.
You're welcome.
That's awesome. So today, we have a special guest with us to talk about a pretty big topic. Like I said, a listener suggested this topic, so we're pretty excited to bring it to you. I think it was a voicemail, wasn't it, Mahlon?
That's right.
And I don't know. I'm super excited to have a guest on this one, just because I feel like you and I are probably gonna fall in the line that we always fall in, right? So to have a new person at the table, I think will bring some excitement to this topic for you and I also, as well as you, our guests. So today's topic is gun control.
Here at the Round Table, we don't want to shy away from controversial topics. Instead, we want to break them open and show them in maybe a brand new light, challenging ourselves to see those topics from a different point of view, so we can address our biases, we can consume new opinions, and open ourselves up in a different way of thinking. With that being said, I'd like to introduce our guest today, who's going to be helping us talk through this topic. And that is Ben. So Ben, welcome to the Round Table, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you, Ben. Ben is my brother. So,
Maybe he didn't want you to say that, Jamie.
well, it's too late.
Maybe he didn't want you to claim him.
Well, it's happened all through school. You're Jamie.
Yeah, I've been guilty of being Jamie's little brother for most of my life, but no, it really the anonymity thing doesn't bother me. So yeah.
Of course, after this episode, he's probably gonna be like, "Can we go back to me being just Ben? Thanks."
Well, despite being my brother, we don't exactly share opinions on this topic. So I was excited to have you on. And for the record, as we have grown up, I have been Ben's big sister more often, I think, than Ben has been Jamie's little brother. So let's...
Post high school, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and if I can just squeeze in here for a minute, because Ben, I know you and I aren't real brothers by blood, but I will say growing up, Ben was like a little brother to me. And for those of you that have listened to our birth order podcast, I'm the youngest in my family. So, I was used to being center of attention, everything focused on me, some of those typical third child traits. So when Jamie and I became friends and we started hanging out, Ben tagged along with us on sometimes. And so it was like having a little brother. So it gave me a different perspective growing up that way. But Ben, I think I owe you a big apology because I think I was a jerk to you more than I was a friend when we were growing up. So let me just go on the record to say I am very sorry that I was probably a typical kid and treated you like garbage because you were younger than us, because that was not right. And I think now he could probably whoop me. So I'm just trying to take the time now to say I'm sorry.
That's fine. Thank you very much for that. And just know that is the exact same reason why my sister has apologized to me since then, because yes, now I could whoop my sister.
A lot changes when the person you used to pick on gets bigger than you. So you know what? I've always liked you, Ben. I always have.
For sure.
Yeah, gun control. It's a hot issue to discuss in any capacity, even among like-minded people. It can be kind of intense, and I think a lot of that is because when you really think about gun control, the topic of gun control is a lot like a diamond. It's multifaceted, and it is worth a lot of money. The politicians who get all kinds of funding for their campaigns from gun rights groups, concerned mom groups, discussing things like not allowing firearms and things like that. Then you start running into problems where you're putting people's jobs at risk. So, I mean, there's so many different kinds of people that could have very strong opinions on gun control, and it doesn't even have to be about violence.
I love how you say it's multifaceted because, I mean, you and I talking even earlier this week about this topic, there's so many different aspects to this topic alone. We could be here for 6 days podcasting about it, So, by no means are we thinking we're going to get an entire even understanding of the entirety of the complexities of this topic. But
this conversation today is not meant to be all inclusive or everything about gun control by any means. There's no way. But
right.
What I do like what you were saying, Ben, is that you were recognizing, and you kind of gave a nod, although you probably didn't name every group, and I don't think anybody can, but all the different people that are touched by gun control. So I think some of the first things that you hear about, at least I do, when you hear about gun control is don't take my rights away. And even to me, when we got this suggestion from our listener, and my first reaction was, well, don't take my rights away. If I take a step back, gun control isn't always about removing, but more of shaping how people can interact or use or buy firearms or guns. So I just wanted to kind of call that out there, that I appreciate that when you started talking, you kind of started putting us in that lens already, because that was one that I had to learn, and I still learn. Because again, I hear the words gun control and I immediately do a full body clinch, like, don't take my rights away. You can't touch my rights. And that's not even what this conversation is meant to be.
And right. That's why a lot of the time when I'm I'm discussing gun control, I will say gun control or gun rights, because really, I mean, it is kind of a push and pull, especially where I stand politically. I'm kind of in this weird area politically where somebody might have a hard time figuring out where my party alignment is.
That's so true.
And it's yeah. I mean, my Democrat friends all think that I'm a staunch conservative, and all of my conservative friends think that I'm a bleeding heart liberal. I personally have always referred to it as a free thinking American. I don't go with any one. I don't go with any one side for all of my political needs. I'm very conservative on some things, but very liberal on others.
What?
It wasn't until recently my best friend, who was also very similar, said that it's typically referred to as a pro-gun Democrat, and I guess he's not wrong. Okay. I guess that would be an accurate way to describe it.
So I'm going to show my ignorance here for just a second, Ben. I'm sorry, but when that is a term that I have never heard before, because I got to be honest, when Jamie and I were talking and trying to form this episode, and your name was brought up, I think I used the term unicorn, didn't I, Jamie? I was like, that's a unicorn. Yeah. I've never heard that before. So it's fascinating to me. And again, I don't want to put anybody in a box. I don't want to be put in a box. So I don't want to offend you especially. But do you mind kind of walking through what that really means? Because I honestly can say that is a brand new term that I am not familiar with. And I think I can put the pieces together, but I think it'd be really great having you here if you would just take like a minute or two. Would you mind just digging a little deeper and kind of explaining that point of view?
Yeah. Pro-gun Democrat, I think, is really more about the feeling that it gives rather than someone is simply a Democrat that likes guns. Pro-gun Democrats will... I've seen some people that have been they've had very, very strong feelings one way or the other on various other topics like abortion rights and things of that nature. Social programs is another pretty big one, where you'll get all kinds of a varying degree of opinions on it. Whereas with me, with so many of those things, I think the reason why I tend to straddle that line very, very high is because I guess I just don't really see that anything has to be completely on one side or another. Say, for example, with social programs, I don't mind paying a little extra in taxes for those social programs to exist. I do, however, feel like that maybe some of that tax dollar needs to be spent on regulating how to get into those programs. You know, I don't mind paying extra for food stamps to be out there and available. You know, but the families who are getting them that maybe don't need them, you know, maybe there's a little bit more of that going on than I would be comfortable with if it were under my control. And so it kind of puts you in a bit of a sticky situation when you go to the ballot box, because everybody is one extreme or another. So sometimes it's really hard to find the guy that you really want to put your name, you know, put your dot next to his name. But yeah, I mean, it's my position changes on whatever topic it is. It's just, it just depends on what I feel, how I feel it's important to me.
What's interesting, and part of the platform of this whole podcast is, you know, especially since 2020, but even before the pandemic, we saw this massive exodus in the middle of two very polarized party systems, right? We've got conservatives on one side that have one set of views, liberals on another side that have completely different views. And we've kind of lost, I think, some of those voices in the middle. And what I appreciate about your stance in this so much is that you're the guy in the middle stretching across, trying to figure out how to grab and, you know, hang on. So it's an interesting stance, even in Mahlon and I's conversations, to have something so central in some of these pretty hot debates. So
Well, and I mean, that's kind of where the keep calm thing, when you kind of try to keep that level head in the middle, and you're trying to think about things from either side in your day-to-day experience looking at politics, you'll just be like, then that joke comes around. Can't we all just get along? But it's one of those things where it's like, well, why can't you see that, this is maybe a little unreasonable, and why can't you give a little bit on this side so that maybe we can, kind of figure out something that works for everybody. But I think a large part of the problem with some of that is that anytime a valid argument is made from one side or another in national politics, that's where some kind of deflection comes from. Like, yeah, well, that changes this over here. It's like, we're not talking about that. So, I don't know. It's just kind of, it makes conversations interesting when they get political, but I mean, ultimately we're all human. We're all entitled to our own opinions, and it'd just be really nice if we could get along.
Yeah. So Ben, one of the themes that I'm getting from you as you're talking, and again, I don't want to put you in this box, but it sounds like when you make decisions, it doesn't come across that you are fueled by emotion. It seems like you're really thinking through things. You're a logical thinker. And that's one of the things that, in a previous episode, I mentioned that I've been helping out at the voting polls and kind of helping, volunteer my time. And I can't tell you how many times people will come and ask for help, or they will actually show us their ballot, which is kind of interesting. But a lot of times you'll see that they'll just circle a box that they want to just follow their own party. And one thing that you said that it really resonates to me is, I'm a Republican. I'm a registered Republican. I don't mind sharing I'm a Republican. But that doesn't mean I just circle the one box and walk away, because there's some things within my own party I don't agree with. And so I like reading through, and then sometimes I do vote across the aisle because it is the best choice. And I like to have that freedom to do that. So I can appreciate that. That's the kind of sense I'm getting from you, is that you're a logical thinker. You're not really driven by a lot of emotions, or at least your decisions aren't made by emotions. But I'm curious, when we get back to the topic of gun control, how do you apply that same view or perspective to that topic? Are you still even keeled, or is there one side that you kind of go to over the other? Are you for gun control? Are you against gun control?
Well, okay, so gun control is so multifaceted, it's ridiculous. But when we talk about things like gun control in a general manner, gun control versus gun rights, you're the resident Republican. What does the Constitution have to say about gun control?
Okay, so I'm going to go on a ledge here. I am not an avid reader of the Constitution, but what I do understand of it, or at least I think I understand of it, is that we have a constitutional right to bear arms. And for me, for the longest time, and I think I kind of mentioned this at the beginning, when I hear gun control, I automatically go to, you're affecting my rights. Don't take my rights away. Don't change my rights. Now, suddenly, I'm not a logical thinker. I am now responding out of emotion, or, you've kind of hit a nerve with me. Not so much that I am a gun lover, and that's not the topic. It's the fact that, hey, these are my rights that have been given to me, that I've grown up with. I want to protect them. So for me, when I look at the rights, that's not really up for discussion or up for conversation. And that's probably where I need to work on maybe being a little bit more open, because there are rights. We all have them. I want to focus on something else. Now, what's interesting around gun control, and what I'm trying to use to separate the two, and when I really stop and think about it, Ben, is I am for some gun regulation. What I'm not for is regulating it to the point where they're no longer available, or the private sector can't have them anymore. Maybe it's only more for our military or for other areas, but not for the everyday person who wants to go out and have a gun. So for me, I'm working to separate the fact of what are my rights versus even gun control, and how that impacts one or the other. And so I'm starting to recognize those as being two separate things, if that makes sense. And so for me, gun rights has a layer of regulation, which I'm comfortable with. but I don't want it to be over-regulated to the point where now it's impossible to even have or own a firearm if I wanted to.
So
Right.
I'm curious, Mahlon, I guess what do you mean by regulation? Because that is probably part of gun control, right? Is the regulation of firearms and the ownership of. So what does reasonable and effective regulation look like for you?
You need to be able to register to have a license. I think you need to make sure you register the firearm that you purchase. I don't find any problem with having a background check with people that are going to get a gun. So those to me are reasonable. I think we should have record of which gun was purchased by who, and when you trade that gun in and get a different one, there should be a record of sale or transfer of ownership. When there's a private sale of a firearm, I still think there should still be some sort of title exchange. We do that with vehicles. We do that with cars. If I have a car and I sell it to someone, the title has to get signed over. I think that still is reasonable within firearms. And not to put it in such a general term, but I think those are the building blocks for me, Jamie. I think if you start going out beyond that, limiting the ability to purchase or even making firearms, that's to me when it starts becoming unreasonable, in my opinion.
It's interesting that you made a comparison for gun control or gun rights to motor vehicles, because the Constitution also gives us the right to free travel. But despite that the right to free travel is in the Constitution, it is very rare that you hear conservatives complaining about the infringement on that right by requiring them to have insurance, requiring them to have a license, and things like that. But whereas with gun control, somehow it's more sensitive when somebody suggests that this thing, somebody should maybe prove that they know how to handle the firearm and be licensed to have it. So, I mean, it's interesting that you made that comparison when really they're very similar. The only difference that I can see is that, cars are made to transport. Guns have a whole different purpose. So, I mean, I would think that the argument would be stronger for why am I having to have a driver's license for a car? So, I mean, I don't know. That was just something that kind of popped into my head while you were kind of talking about that.
Well, and I guess for me, regulation, I am not opposed to regulating things like clip sizes and not making automatic weapons readily available, silencers, those sorts of things that make destruction of people easier. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious, Ben, what your thoughts are then on regulation. Mahlon's saying, hey, let's make sure that people are doing background checks and finding a process to register gun owners. What are your thoughts on regulation? What does that look like for the unicorn in the room?
Okay. So the way that I sit on regulation as a whole is that we already have gun laws. We have gun regulation. And you do a Google search any day of the week and you're going to see that there are a lot of situations where it just doesn't seem to be working. That's because gun control as it exists in this country does not work. A large portion of our focus is on the wrong parts of gun control. Now, with regulation, you could, there's a lot of regulation already out there. Things like, the requirements that you have to have in order to purchase firearms, everything. Do you know what it takes to be able to purchase a gun? Do either of you own a gun?
I do not. I do. I guess I have a very limited. Let me backtrack that about a bit. I have a limited understanding of what some of that process is. That there is. I believe you have to. Isn't there? There's paperwork that goes into the local police department, or is that just for conceal and carry? I guess I don't know which process is which for different. Because owning a gun, I assume the permit to own a gun is different than the permit to conceal and carry.
Yes. It's very different. Well, so have either of you taken like a hunter safety course? Have either of you done any sort of shooting classes, anything like that? Mahlon, have you done any sort of thing with any of that stuff?
So I haven't taken a class yet, but that is on my list of things to do. What I have done is I've gone with as a couple's date night. We did go to a firing range, and we were able to look at several different guns. And there they had a class even before you could handle any of their firearms, and especially if you do not have a license or a gun permit. We had to watch a class and kind of go through a training exercise. And then we had hands-on training we picked up the gun that we were going to practice with. And they brought us over and they kind of explained the gun, how to load it, all the safety features, everything about it before we were even able to handle it. And then even when we did have it, they were behind us. And when I say behind, like stepping on my heels behind me for the first couple rounds, just to make sure things were working as expected. And then they took a couple steps back. So we had constant supervision, which I appreciated. But to answer your question, no, I have not had any like gun safety, hunter safety. I haven't been to any other class around what it would take to purchase a firearm. But what I do have a question though is, aren't they a little bit different by state? So again, without going into specific state laws, are we just going to generalize my understanding as I think they are? There is a registration process that you have to do when you purchase them that goes into the state that basically it gets cataloged of your name with the firearm, with the serial number, all attached. So there's a record of what this firearm was purchased by whom. Outside of that, I really don't know any of the other intricacies.
Okay. Well, I mean, and I'm not super well versed in all of them in specific localities or anything like that. We can all just very easily assume that whatever it is in California is probably just completely crazy. It's going to be a lot more involved than anywhere else. But as a general rule, like especially in the Midwest and stuff like that, as an example, neither of you are licensed in any way. Neither of you have really taken any formal training. Mahlon has, gone and experienced something where he was shown how to operate a firearm. Both of you would be able to walk into any sort of a sportsman's type superstore and buy a rifle. Both of you would be able to go in and buy a shotgun in any one of those places. Not having to prove that you've taken any sort of a hunter safety, not having to prove that you know what you're doing with it. You'd be able to walk into a place and fill out an application and potentially walk out with a firearm. Handguns are a little bit different in most localities. Like where I live, you can open carry a handgun, and in order to get one, you just have to have what's called a firearm purchase permit, which basically you go to your local police station, you fill out the same form that you fill out every time you do anything that has anything to do with guns, and they ask a series of very simple questions. They do a background check, and then they issue this firearm purchase permit. And what that does is that gives you a card that you can take in to a gun shop, and you set that on the table, and then they give you the application to fill out, the same one that you filled out to get the firearm purchase permit. You fill it out the same way. You pay them the money, they give you the gun, and away you go. Now, the firearm purchase permit, the purpose of that was to eliminate some more archaic type laws where they would have, you could walk into a gun store, buy a handgun, and then you leave without it. But you could go back to the store and pick it up a week later. And the reason for those kind of laws was to prevent crimes of passion, where somebody drives by their house and they see that their wife is home and their buddy's truck is out in front of the house and the bedroom light is on. Well, rather than stopping at home and figuring out what's going on, he drives to the gun store, buys a gun, goes home, shoots his wife and his buddy. Well, if you have a firearm, if you require a firearm purchase permit, then they have to go and apply for it, wait a week to get it, and then go buy the gun, and then they can go shoot their buddy and their wife. It gives that extra week to give somebody time to cool down and all of that stuff.
Well, that
was the purpose
of the firearm purchase. That's just assuming that they don't already have one.
Right. if somebody has a firearm purchase permit, then they likely already likely own guns, and then then that guy could just go into his house and grab one of his own guns. So that was the purpose of the firearm purchase permit. Now, where I live, you can also use a concealed carry permit in place of a firearm purchase permit. And concealed carry isn't exactly universal, but the general process of it is. And that's that you go and you take a concealed carry course with somebody who is one of the things that I don't really care about the requirements to be an instructor for concealed carry. One of them is that you have to be a member of the NRA. I am not a big fan of the NRA.
Okay, wait a second. You have to be a member of the NRA in your state to get a conceal and carry permit.
No.
Okay.
In order to be an instructor, you have to be a member of the NRA.
Sorry, that's...
Now, I feel that it would be reasonable that police officers should be allowed to be instructors without being members of the NRA. But generally, I mean, for whoever it is that you're learning from, you go and you take this class. And the class can vary in length, but there's several parts to it. You sit and you learn and you go through instruction. There's a lecture portion. After that, there is a testing portion. If you pass the multiple choice test, then they'll generally take you out to a firing range where you do the practical application test under instruction. And then after that, you're still not done for a concealed carry permit. After that, you have to then apply. Like where I'm at, it's the state patrol. The state patrol handles all of that. Usually it's some kind of a state level police force that oversees the process. Here, the state troopers hold that, and you go to them. You give them your application. They take your thumb and fingerprints. They take your palm prints. They take your picture. They get everything. You are no longer anonymous at this point. Your fingerprints, whether you've committed a crime in your life or not, your fingerprints are put into the AFIS system, the automatic fingerprint identification system used by police and law enforcement. But you're still not done. Then you have to wait for them to do background checks. I don't remember how far the background checks go, but they do a national background check to make sure that you have not committed any violent crimes or been involved in any kind of organized crime or anything like that. Then you wait 45 days and then you get a permit in the mail. That allows you to conceal carry. And a concealed carry permit acts just the same as a firearm purchase permit. So it's a lot more difficult to get to, but there's also more instruction. There's more knowledge gained, more education, and a higher expectation. Now, the difference between the two is that, you've got rifles, shotguns, muzzle loaders, those kind of things. Those are all available to anybody that without any sort of training or permit in a lot of places. Handguns are treated different, but rifles are the problem, particularly. What are the rifles called that are a big problem, that are a part of all the big shootings?
Oh, aren't they the automatic rifles or semi-automatic rifles?
Typically I'm used to hearing the word assault rifle. Assault rifle is thrown around a lot. AR does not mean assault rifle. It means Armalite rifle. It's a style of a rifle. But those fall under rifles. The rules to get an AR is no different from the rules to get a shotgun or a hunting rifle or anything like that.
Okay, so you can't see this, but I just had a whole light bulb thing happen, because that was going to be my question, is that, it sounds like there is some regulation. There's some steps in place, and yet here we are in 2023, and we have had more mass shootings than we have had days in the year. And so, you know, if we have, yeah, look it up. I know. If you could see Mahlon's face, he's like, what?
So we've had, if I'm counting the days of we've had over 100 mass shootings this year.
I believe it was 5 or 6 days ago. On that day, it was like 138, and we were on the 100th day of the year.
So at one point in time, there was more than one mass shooting happening a day?
Yes, and it's been like that most of the year. The first time I saw that stat was late January.
Do you know, just for reference, do you know where that stat came from?
Literally, you can Google it. There's like a website that tracks how many, where they are, and how many people were injured and how many people were killed in each one. And so, yeah, you can go and see where the locations are, and
that's sad. And that's, I mean, before we even continue going on, I think we all agree that's horrifying. That's terrible. Mm-hmm. Whoever's a victim of a mass shooting or any shooting, is just tragic. So I don't want to diminish. I don't want to diminish that. I was just surprised because that is a little bit of an alarming statistic. That's one that I haven't really heard because I think that would have jumped off the page for me. So again, I just wanted to kind of dig that a little bit.
And it definitely, jumped off the page is a good way of saying it. Slapped me in the face was another. You know, we've got all of these things that are in place to regulate guns, but that thing you just said, Ben, that assault rifles, which aren't actually assault rifles, I don't remember what you said. I still will probably, I think the media calls them assault rifles. Let's just be honest.
They do. Yes.
So assault rifles are included in our state as a gun that I can go to a sporting store and buy without a permit.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that seems like a big gapping hole in this idea that maybe we should have some sort of process to acquire these weapons, because those are weapons that are often used in these type of situations that we find ourselves in constantly in America right now.
So I'm going to ask again. I'll be the devil's advocate in this topic. So I'm just curious, Jamie, with what I know of your stance and you as a person and this topic that we're hearing and all the information that Ben's been able to give me and give us, in your opinion, what type of regulation would you need in order to feel better about shotguns, rifles, assault rifles, whatever we're going to call them? What would it take for you to feel better about the sale of those firearms in the country?
Well, I guess I'm just confused as to why they are singled out. Other than, okay, so there is some hunting. We use shotguns and rifles for hunting, right? Which is probably why they are not included in the registration process or the permit process. But I guess I've never thought, I want to go kill an animal and I need to do it in 2 hours. Walmart, here I come, right? Like, I mean, you plan for those things. You have to go get a license to go hunting. Why wouldn't you need a license to go purchase the gun to hunt the animal that you just got the license and the tag to go harvest? I guess to me that is that's really surprising. I assumed that there was some regulation on, especially rifles that aren't intended for hunting animals. Rifles that contain massive clips of ammunition should, to me, be included in any handgun registration process.
Some do.
Yeah, but
as a matter of fact, with hunting, I have known several people who have used AR-15s as hunting rifles. The bullet doesn't change. When a gun is designed, it is going to use one of the sizes of bullets that is available, and the round used by an AR-15 is the same as many hunting rifles. So it's really what the rifle is at that point is a means to fire the cartridge. Now when in a lot of places like where I live, I think you are not allowed to hold more than 3 or 5 rounds in your rifle when you're hunting, like when you're deer hunting. You can't. I think it's 3, but it could be as high as 5. So I mean, if you have a 3-round magazine on an AR-15, then that is very much a hunting rifle. I mean, I hate that people use them as hunting rifles, because the purpose of an AR is not for hunting. I hate how people say that they are the same thing and all of that, because it's really irresponsible to say that an AR-15 is the same as a hunting rifle. But you could purpose an AR-15 for hunting. Now, the magazine capacity does make a difference. So if you're using an AR-15 for hunting, then all you need is a 3 to 5 round magazine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are magazines that you can hold much more. 10, 30. I mean, you can get massive magazines for them. And I don't disagree that a limit on magazine capacity could be effective. Now, it's not going to stop people from using those weapons for horrible purposes, but it could make a difference for somebody that is in one of those situations. Say, for example, if you have, say you've got a dad, and he's taking his 8-year-old son to the movie theater to go watch a new movie. If somebody busts in at the front of that movie theater and starts shooting the place, and that dad gets his kid to the floor, but that dad also knows that the only magazines that are out there and available are 10 rounds, then that dad can count, and he can listen, and as soon as he hears the ninth shot, he can tell his son, go, run, send his kid out the door, and he can follow him, and he knows that he's got just a precious second longer to get his kid out of that room and someplace safe. But because we don't know, I mean, there is so much difference in magazine capacities that you don't know what they have. Then you don't have the ability to even put yourself into a place where you could even think, could I sit there and count and possibly take advantage of a very short time frame to make a big difference.
Well, that's something I hadn't thought of. Because I wouldn't have any idea I don't know if I would have the wherewithal to even think to count. You know what I'm saying?
But if it was something that was common,
Yeah.
If it was something that you knew commonly, that all magazines for those kind of rifles carry 10 rounds.
Yep.
I
hadn't thought of that. That's a good point.
So,
yeah. Malin, it looks
part of the.
I was gonna say it looks like you have something to say,
Yeah.
Malin.
Because I'd say part of the regulation, then what I think, and I don't want to put words in either one of your guys' mouths, so please correct me. But it sounds like part of the regulation that you're maybe questioning or looking for is regulating the size of ammunition clips that are in each of these weapons. Is that a fair statement?
That is one form,
and
that is one very simple form.
And through this conversation, I've heard a lot about hunting. What about the need for firearms that are beyond hunting? And I'm trying to think, and again, I have limited scope here. So my wife's family are on a farm, so they go and hunt on their own property. They also use it for target practice. I believe one of their kids was in, what's it called when it's in school they shoot the targets? What's that called? Trapping? Is it called trapping?
Trap shooting? Are you talking about the like the clay pigeons and stuff like that?
So it makes me think, what about for sport or for fun? There's a variety of reasons why people own firearms. And I know in this conversation we've said hunting, but what about if we regulated the ammunition clips? Let's just say we picked 3, just for the sake of the discussion. Does that do anything to anywhere else where we use firearms responsibly, does that change the outcome of certain sports that people are part of, or even the sheer fact of, be able to go out and enjoy these guns, these firearms, and on their own property, doing their own thing? Is that infringing too much on, on those individuals and those activities?
Well, my feeling on limited magazine capacity, it being right at 10 rounds. Like, I know you said 3. I'm going to go with 10.
I like 10.
And why do I feel that 10 is reasonable? Well, I don't do a lot of aggressive shooting. I don't go out and get aggressive with people and shoot at things, and just because I'm mad at them or whatever. The majority of the shooting that I do is at paper targets. Most people, the majority of the shooting that they do is at paper targets. Now, on most paper targets, the bullseye is 10 points. If you shoot 10 bullets at that target, that's a possible 100 points, right? That's easy to keep track of. So in sport shooting, things like, like target shooting competition teams and things like that, it's pretty reasonable. 10 rounds makes sense to me. People who do things like, have you ever seen the 3-gun tournaments or anything like that? Keanu Reeves actually has a couple of really good videos up of him doing it. But you have like an AR, you have a handgun and a shotgun, and you go through basically an obstacle course shooting at targets with various different kinds of guns, swapping between those guns, reloading and things like that. It's a sport. And yeah, I think, part of the 3-gun competition is, part of it is reloading, showing your ability to reload in a situation and get back to work, So with that being a part of that kind of competition, I don't see why having a magazine limited at 10 rounds is a problem.
Well, and it's not,
even just for entertainment purposes.
It's not just the clip sizes, though. I mean, honestly, it's gun types too. Like, I have to admit, my mind is a bit blown to know that the state that I live in will allow anyone to go pick up an AR rifle, without any sort of background check, without any sort of registration process, nothing. I can go to Walmart and pick up an AR, whatever.
No, you don't misunderstand. There is a background check. There's this form. Okay. It's pretty famous, and I'll tell you what, I'll just go ahead and I've got one pulled up here. I'll share it on your screen here. Now this is the form for the state that I live in. It's going to be pretty similar just about everywhere, and in some places actually use the federal version. But I mean, as you can see on here, it's got everything from, your name, social security number, which is voluntary. You don't have to give your social security number, but
what?
The reason why it's voluntary is because, the reason why you don't actually have to put your social security number is because that's a very private thing. I mean, your social security number? Come on.
When I took
to just be on a sheet of paper?
Nope. Sorry. When I took my children to go get their driver's license, they had to give them a social security number. Are you kidding me?
Right. But it would behoove somebody to put their social security number on here, because then it will limit the ability for misidentification.
So
that is why it's even on there.
So
at
Ben,
all.
Before we keep going on this, I do have a question. Part of the process,
yes.
And maybe you're going to get there, so if I jump the gun, just tell me to cool my jets. But when you fill out this application, do you also have to have a copy of some sort of ID, driver's license, something that goes along with this application? Okay.
Yes. Yes, you have to have a state issue. Well, at least where I'm at, you have to have a state issue ID. And if it's a handgun, you have to have a firearm purchase permit or a concealed carry permit. But yeah, I mean, it's got all of this in here, your address, how long you've been at the address, so that way they can kind of correlate with other things and everything. height, weight, race.
Then it's all the wordy ones at the bottom. These are the ones that I want to know about.
Now these are the fun ones. So these are the questions that actually get you a permit, like a firearm purchase permit. These are all the same questions that you fill out every time you buy a gun, try to get any kind of a permit, concealed carry permit, any of that stuff. Anytime you do anything with a gun, you're going to answer these questions, and they're they get a little old sometimes. Are you under indictment or information in any court or felony for any crime for which a judge could imprison you for more than 1 year? Very easy question for a lot of people to answer. I haven't had any court proceedings in my entire life. Easy no. Have you been convicted in a court for a felony or any other crime for which a judge would have imprisoned you for more than 1 year? Even if you have received a shorter sentence, including probation, again, if you haven't been in court, that's an easy no. Are you a fugitive from justice? If somebody was, why would they answer yes? I have no idea. But, it's still a question that they ask. Now, there's a lot of those, unlawful user of drugs, varying different kinds, marijuana, depressants, stimulants, whatever. But the one that always catches my attention, have you ever been adjudicated mentally defective, which includes having been adjudicated incompetent to manage your own affairs, or have you been committed to a mental institution?
I have questions. I have so many questions.
Mm-hmm.
You've purchased a gun, correct?
Yes.
You have filled out this form, correct?
Yes.
Do they do anything beyond taking your word for it when you fill this form out?
This gets sent in and it gets correlated with a national system. So they will. It's essentially like a background check, but it's really not. It's not real in depth.
To me,
I was going to say.
So to me, this really reads as almost a CYA to the place that's selling the firearm. They've done their due diligence. If you lie on the application or you put in misinformation, this is, to me, how I'm reading it, is this is a way for them to say, we did our due diligence, we asked these questions, these are the answers they provided. So, to
Right.
Jamie's point, do we know beyond this questionnaire and sending it in and being put into a database, is there any kind of follow-up or record check or anything beyond that in the state that you live in? Do you know?
It really depends on the locality, and I think that's part of what makes gun control discussions so difficult, is that it changes so much depending on where you are. No matter how you feel about him, Bernie Sanders said it really great when somebody asked him about gun control and gun control laws, and he had simply said, guns in Massachusetts are different from guns in Chicago. And some people feel no, their guns are just guns. But talk to those people in those two places what they feel about guns, and they're going to say two completely different things. And that's why a good portion of our gun control laws really should be left to the local, the people to decide in their localities, especially with gun control. I feel like that should be something left to the people. But I think what a more important question is, Jamie, you were worrying about whether, they're just taking their word for it or whatever. It kind of goes a little bit deeper than that. So this one that I read is about mental defects. It's asking about incompetence and things like that. But have you ever been adjudicated mentally defective? That is very specific. That means that you have to be deemed in a court by a judge that you are mentally defective. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't hear about that happening real often.
Well, it happens. It happens. But I guess my issue with this statement alone, I have so many things to say about. Just because it doesn't take into account, like, for instance, have you been committed to a mental institution, right? I mean, how many youth do we have that are struggling with suicidality and may go into an inpatient situation for stabilization or something at the age of 15 or 16, and then at 30 years old it may look totally different. So not only is this like
So,
it
so wait a minute.
it
So,
does
are you asking? And I want to pick at that just for a second because I want to understand.
yes,
So,
please.
are you saying that because there might be a trend with this individual because they had problems back when they were in their youth, 14, 15, and now they're an adult, and maybe life has changed, circumstances have changed? Are you saying that you would still want there to be more recognition of what happened way back in his youth?
No, I'm saying that this, like, it almost leaves no ability for recovery. It's like then that person always, if they answer this truthfully, it always is a red mark for them. And that may not be the
Right.
case.
Well, but if you're going through the court to get someone's telling you're incompetent, I mean, there's a difference between saying someone's someone is living a life that's different than mine. They're a little odd. They're strange. Versus,
or having been committed to a mental institution. That I mean, yeah, there are kids that wind up in some kind of a hospital that because they're going something really horrible. It might even be the home that they're living in, and then when they get out, they're fine. When they grow up and become adults and they've worked through the trauma that they've lived through and things like that, they could be perfectly fine to have a firearm, but
or they've sought treatment,
but this also does. I mean, this is take into consideration that this is also for your adult life. They're asking about your adult life here.
It doesn't say that. It doesn't say that at all. And the thing for me is that just because I go purchase, on the other hand of that, just because when I go purchase a weapon, I can answer no to that, but that may be wholly different by the time I use that weapon in a way that harms another human being. This isn't like a one. So as much as I appreciate this as a screening tool, I suppose, a application to purchase a firearm, this isn't enough. Just like what we've done with trying to regulate types of guns or clip sizes isn't enough. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
So this is a point in time, just like anything is. So my question to you on that, Jamie, is what would you need to feel like that gap is closing?
Well, that's what I was getting at. This alone isn't going to do it. This alone isn't enough to say, okay, we are trusting you with a firearm and good luck because we know you're always going to be okay. Yay.
Yeah, but so what are you suggesting? And again, I'm curious, like, again, point in time, I go and purchase a firearm. Everything on this list is answered appropriately. I have no issues. I didn't read through all of them, but I answer the questionnaire. I'm good to go. Then life changes 2 or 3 years, and suddenly some of these boxes I can't answer the same way truthfully as I could. But I already have the firearm. I mean, what are you proposing? Because once that point in time is passed, your whole world could change.
That's what I'm saying. This isn't enough. But if we have some, okay, just let me finish. So you guys can't see his face, and he's like, "That's what I'm saying." But you've got this, and then if you have some good regulations on what is available, if you aren't able to go purchase a assault rifle, a semi-automatic assault rifle that can hold 20 or 30 rounds of ammunition, then those two things together make it just a little bit safer. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, this isn't enough. And just regulating clip sizes isn't enough. I'm saying it has to be not only that, but we haven't even touched on what is causing, like, what the drive is behind all of these horrible things that are happening. Why is this such a huge trend? You know what I'm saying?
That's people. I mean, that has nothing to do with the weapons. That has everything to do with the people that are holding the weapons.
Right, but it's like saying, okay, Do we have cars readily available on the market that can go 300 miles an hour? Nope. Right? Like, who drives a car that can go 300 miles an hour? Because the speed limits on the interstate are 75 miles an hour. So we don't give people vehicles that they can go and mow down a bunch of motorists on the interstate.
Well,
we regulate
but
those
no,
things. You know what I'm saying?
No, because we do. It's just not at 300 miles per hour. But you can do mass damage. These vehicles, and again, I know it's not the point, but I'm just going to take a little rabbit hole trail here. We have cars that can go up to 160, 180 miles per hour, and these are heavy vehicles. At even 20 miles an hour, you can severely hurt someone, property, whatever, with these cars. So imagine going 100 miles an hour, even 50 miles an hour in a vehicle. The damage you can do with those things is enormous. So yes,
but to the same point, you can go purchase a gun that can harm someone.
But again,
but you can't purchase a gun that can harm 300 people. You know what I'm saying?
Well, but
see, that's and both sides see, and I want you both to look here. Like both of you are right. Okay. There's this thing where we have trouble with realizing that, okay, yes, you take a gun out, like and set it on a table. The gun is not going to go out and shoot people. The gun is going to need somebody to pick it up. And I hate that argument, and I hate that it's so used by conservatives as an argument. But at the same time, it's not wrong. Okay, the gun is not going to go hurt anybody. The person that is closest to that gun that could potentially go and hurt people, if you put them closer to a car that can go 120 miles per hour and do a lot of damage, might choose the car too. Okay, so obviously the problem doesn't lie in the tool here. Okay, the person, we need to look at that person. We need to see what is going on with that person and why they have this need to utilize a tool that isn't necessarily made to hurt people. I mean, there are guns out there that the purpose of them is to hurt people.
So here's what I was.
But to use this tool to hurt people and use this other tool that's just made for transportation to also hurt people, both of them require a sick person. So that sick person has something that needs to be addressed. In order for neither of those things to be something that he would use to hurt somebody else, he or she would use to hurt somebody else. Now, really, when you're looking at that, most of the time it's mental illness. It is some kind of mental illness, some kind of trauma, distress, desperation. I mean, those kind of things can be generated from a lot of different things that could be addressed elsewhere in our politics. A lot of people who use guns to commit crimes are people who are desperate. They use a gun in a jewelry store or a bank to get money because they can't make ends meet, and they feel like that's their only option. That's not something that they would normally do, but because the weight of life and where they are at versus the income and what kind of income is required to continue surviving puts people into a position where they feel like they need to do something drastic in order to make ends meet. And a lot of the time that involves guns and crime. Somebody who's going through some kind of a crazy situation with their family might be in the same kind of situation. The only thing that they can think of is I'm going to solve this problem with a firearm.
Right, but again, in those situations, all tragic, all horrible, all probably real,
mm-hmm.
that is not something gun control would be able to fix. That's almost regulating humans. I mean, we all have behaviors.
Well, it's not necessarily regulating humans, because at that point, what you're looking for is a solution to a lot of little potential problems.
But
and those little potential problems are the source of things like mental illness and things like that. Now, how can we fix mental illness? It's very simple, because there's one word in there that is key with this, and that is illness. And this is another very hot button issue in politics in this world, and that's healthcare.
Well, right, and
making healthcare affordable and having access to mental health care. But the problem is that anytime you bring that up as a solution, it's socialism.
well, and
I feel like that the argument for allowing for people to get better versus making access to making people better, like so that we can do things like continue to have those other things that we like to have, like guns. We don't have to worry about guns as much. I mean, it's not gonna eradicate the problem completely. There will still be gun violence if everybody is mentally healthy. It will be there.
There's a lot of people of sound mind who make bad decisions. And to go back to what you're talking about, and again, I love the topic. That's something that Jamie and I have actually talked about coming in shortly, is talk about healthcare and all of those wonderful things. But again, everything that you said there, Ben, is all about people and their actions and their choices they made and their state of mind. It has nothing to do with regulating this tool, this firearm, that would eradicate. Would it help? I don't know if you could say yes or no. It's definitely not going to eradicate it, like you said. But again, we're talking about regulating the tool when the problem is the people who use the tool for what it's not intended for.
Well,
I don't know how much more you can regulate the tool to help fix or curve that. I don't see it.
I don't think that there is nothing that can be done in that way. But I think the other piece of that too is then it's not what's wrong with the person. It's not what's wrong with the human being that's going and committing these horrible, horrible crimes, but what has happened to them. When you look at the history of some of these types of violence, you see a pattern. You see a pattern in grown kids that go back to their school and commit these things. And, that shouldn't be dismissed either, that there is some societal problems that are leading to some of these things also.
I'm not ignoring or saying that doesn't happen or that doesn't exist. What I'm saying is gun control we shouldn't be talking about gun control when we're talking about that. What we should be talking about is what exactly Ben and even what you and I have talked about healthcare and what's that look like. But from a gun control perspective, that has no bearing. You can't put a regulation on a tool to the point where you can ensure the person who's using that tool only uses it for one purpose. It's impossible.
No, but you can limit and restrict access in order to ensure that there is less possibility.
And we've done that. We've talked about that for the last hour. We've talked about all the things that are in place that helps make it harder. Might not be impossible, but
there
harder.
are some things, well, I mean, except that, some of it feels really easy.
It seems easier, but you have to admit it's not as easy as walking in and just going to your local store and purchasing it, and they just give it to you. Oh, how much is this? It's $199. Here's $199. Thank you very much. So it might not be as hard as we want it, but we can't ignore the fact that we have made it harder than what it would have been just to walk in and buy a pair of blue jeans. I mean, that is progress. Right. It might not be perfection, but at least it's something. We can't ignore that.
But you're saying that it's progress and it may not be perfection. Does that mean that we're done? So we made some progress. So let's be done with it because we've done what we can do.
Well, I think that's the line that we have to ask ourselves is how far are we going to keep looking at a tool that we need to regulate before we start looking at the people that are using these tools inappropriately and causing huge amounts of damage and casualties.
Again, I still don't feel like it's regulating. I still don't feel like it's regulating the tool. Like as an example for my concealed carry, I had to go and show that I learned what I am to do in certain situations, what I am allowed to do in others, and the legality of my actions of carrying a firearm. I have something to show that says that I have gone through this kind of training, and it's something that I can use to purchase firearms.
Well, and I'm not discounting that, Ben, but what I'm saying is that's wonderful, and I love that. But all that does is show that at one point in time, you were trained, you responded, and you were shown that you can make good judgment calls, and you know how to use a firearm, and you have practice and shown that as a skill that you have done. Nowhere does that piece of paper say this is how you're always going to use a firearm. Just because you have that.
Right. But what it does show is, I mean, one thing that you can be sure of is that if you have somebody who is educated and has spent the time understanding what kind of responsibility that is, they're going to handle that responsibility with more care. To give you an example, I have not been adjudicated or committed, but I do suffer from some mental health illness. But because of my awareness of that, and my awareness through the training that I have gone through, I can identify when I am having some kind of a struggle. I don't carry. Okay. I think outside of myself for a second and go, you know what? I'm not in a good place right now. So if that happens, then I go to my better half, way better than me, and I give her my gun, and she takes it from me. And it's personal responsibility.
Exactly.
And I think that going through that kind of training gives the people that much more personal responsibility to hold themselves accountable for those kind of things. And I think that if we made that a requirement to be able to purchase guns, then I think that more of the people who had them would probably feel more of that personal responsibility.
Well, and that's not something that's something you had to come to, that personal responsibility. That is a step of recovery, mental health recovery.
19-year-old me should not have been within 100 feet of a firearm. I mean, I'm just saying that right now. I am a completely different person than I was at the age of 19. Well, now I am a much more responsible human being, and a lot of that is self-discovery. But I think that had I gone through some kind of training, and also maybe sat down with a therapist for 45 minutes, and they say, you know what? Yeah, this guy can't have nothing. Like, don't give him anything. But if I were to sit down with a therapist today, they would probably say, you know what? This guy seems like he's pretty responsible about it. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's I don't know. I think that it's going to take a comprehensive combination of a lot of these little things. Some of it will be the tools, things like limited magazine capacity. There's no reason at all why anybody should have 30 bullets in their magazine. Like, well, I mean, aside from to go Jack Bauer on a frozen turkey or something, because that's just fun.
To be fair, I mean, I love that last little example you gave, Ben, because I don't know why there might be a valid reason. I'm in the camp of, I don't think I would need more than that, but there might be a valid reason. So I'm glad you threw that little example in there. And what I like about everything you're saying has everything to do with the person, which, again, I'm going to let my Republican side show a little bit. A lot of the arguments that I hear around gun control is that, in order to keep everybody safe, we have to remove guns from the streets. Everybody has to give up their guns. They all have to put them away. And in that argument, what always gets me the most angry is, so we're going to regulate guns because we can't have people be responsible for their actions. And that's what I love, what I hear you say, is that it is a person's responsibility. If you're going to have a firearm and you're going to have a tool, a gun, that's going to be able to cause severe harm or even death to somebody else, you have to be responsible with it. Same thing goes with the car, right? I own a car. I could run over anybody I wanted to, and I got a license when I was 16. I was driving a car when I was 15.
And occasionally you have to go back in and re-up that license, right?
Not as long as there's nothing on my record. Not in the state I live.
Oh, man.
I can just do it automatically. In fact,
Ben, where I live, we have to do it every 5 years, I think. Something
for
like
a while,
that.
Ben, there was a kiosk in the library. So as long as I didn't have anything on my record, I go stand in front of a thing, they take my picture, they reissue it. So again, I mean, everything that you said, which I love, has everything to do with the person behind the gun, and not let's regulate the gun because that's where the evil lies, and it's not. So thank you for that perspective.
I think as we come to a close with this conversation, I do appreciate the views that you've brought, Ben, because I do feel like you, in your unicorn space, have kind of stretched between the gap of conversation that Mahlon and I would have had on our own.
It would have been yes, no, yes, no. So thank you for that different dynamic.
Yes, this was a little less of us lobbing our opinions at one another and stopping to listen to a different one. So that's good. But I guess I want to just point out that, as far as I know, of the three of us, this is not a topic that has personally touched any of us in a tragic way. And that families that have experienced loss because of gun violence might have very differing opinions too. And their perspective is going to be very, very different from anything that we've shared today. And so I just want to, I guess, acknowledge that that trauma that families have gone through, and that so many people in our country have experienced in this year alone, where we have such high numbers of these types of crimes happening. But also, I mean, this is something that's been touching our country since I was in high school. You know, that was kind of when some of these trends started, and so. I just want to acknowledge that and make sure that our guests know that is a piece of this conversation that we don't have the, I guess, the honor of having at the table at this time. So,
well, and to add to that, Jamie, again, Jamie and I differ a lot on a lot of different topics, but even when we talk about gun control, I think, Jamie, you and I both agree that the acts that take place with gun violence and innocent people that are shot and killed, going to the movies, walking across the street, being at a party, whatever it is, we both agree that is a horrendous act of violence, and that is not okay. So again, to kind of put that on the cherry on the sundae, there is, we recognize that and we agree in that regard, and it is very sad and tragic, and we don't want to make light of those situations or those individuals that have gone through that. So I do appreciate the conversation that we had today, and Ben, again, your unicorn awareness that you were able to bring. I really enjoyed it. I would love to be able in future episodes maybe bring you back for different topics. I love how you think and how you challenge. So with that, I just want to say thank you again for joining us at the roundtable.
Yeah.
Any final words from you?
Yeah,
Ben?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like Jamie had pointed out, and then you had kind of elaborated on. I remember asking Jamie about profanity on your podcast. I had told Jamie, that it didn't really feel like that profanity was something that belonged on your podcast, but that there are two words that I feel are the most profane words that can be said on your podcast, and that is that the two worst words in the English language put together are dead kids. The horrible things that have to happen in order for a person to get into that kind of a place is tragic. The amount of victims in any sort of a situation like that is higher than the casualties, and something like that can't be ignored. But I feel like there are answers out there that if we could just set some of our red versus blue differences and disagreements aside, and realize that a common goal can come from two different directions. I think a solution is out there. It just needs to be found. The future of our children deserve that, and they deserve us to take responsibility for that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that was a very, very strong and fair statement that you just made. I think it's something that we all have to kind of look at and say, sometimes we get stuck in our own thoughts and our own, political beliefs, and we don't want to go across the aisle and shake hands with somebody because, they don't think exactly like us. I think in this topic, it's kind of time to maybe put some of those things down and really come to the table and say, okay, we're neither one of us are going to get 100% of what we want, but how can we work together to make this better? I think that conversation is time. I think it's far overdue. And in some weird way, Ben, I hope, not to speak on your behalf, Jamie, but I hope this podcast, this platform, whoever it reaches, whoever is listening to this episode or any of our episodes, the whole point of us trying to look through situations like this with other people's perspective is not to change people's minds, but to understand there are other ways to think. There are other scenarios at play, and starting to recognize those is the first step, in my opinion, to beginning to change the landscape. Once we start understanding that we aren't just living in our own little worlds here, that we all are connected in some way, I think that's when we're going to start understanding and seeing true change.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mahlon, for that. That's and Ben for bringing some different thoughts and perspectives. So this is kind of a tough conversation, and I appreciate having it with the two of you and knowing that this is a safe space to explore these ideas and talk about these things. And yeah, I've appreciated hearing from both of you. So on a different note, as we move our way out of this episode, again, I just want to thank you all for joining us. It's been such a fun adventure so far in the few 6 episodes that we've done. We're looking forward to so much more and would love to hear back from you. We have started a Facebook page. You can find us on Facebook at Roundtable Mindset Podcast. It's got the same logo as what you see when you go and click on it on your favorite streaming services to listen to the episode. So go look for that. You can also reach us by email at roundtablemindset@gmail.com, or you can call or text message us, because this would be cool. 402-891-8999 is the phone number to do that.
Jamie, it's actually
we look forward to hearing from you.
It's actually 402.
Did I mess it up?
Yeah, it's 402-819-8999.
Oh, I was so close.
You were close. It's brand new. It's
okay. We'll just edit that part out.
Through the power of editing, that was never said.
If you still hear that I messed up the phone number, then just make sure to text me on the right phone number and let me know so that I can, let Mahlon know that's okay. Any parting words, Mahlon?
No, I think I've said enough this podcast. I think that's enough. So again, thank you everyone. Appreciate it. Until next time. See you later.
Yep. See you then. Bye guys. This podcast was recorded and edited by Jamie and Mahlon, with music by Famous Cats. If you have a topic you'd like us to discuss, please email us at roundtablemindset@gmail.com. And never miss a new episode by making sure you like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
If you enjoyed your time with us today, do us a favor and invite a friend. Thanks for listening. Please join us next time at the round table, and remember, your opinion and perspective matter, and we might not see eye to eye, but that's okay.